My name is Lizza, 28 years old, and the night my relationship truly ended didn't come with screaming or tears, just silence. It was a Friday night, the kind that everyone else seemed excited about except me. My boyfriend, John Carter, had been insisting all week that I come out with him and his friends to celebrate one of their birthdays. "It'll be fun," he'd said, kissing my cheek in that half-distracted way he did when his phone was in his other hand. I wasn't much for loud bars or neon lights, but I told myself I'd go because that's what I always did. Show up, stay polite, laugh in the right places, and swallow the rest. The bar was already buzzing when we got there, pulsing music, clinking glasses, everyone shouting over each other. John looked in his element. He slapped shoulders, hugged people, ordered a round of shots like he was hosting a show. I stayed near the corner of the booth, nursing my drink and trying to follow conversations that spun faster than I could care. John's friends were the kind of people who documented everything: selfies, cheers, boomerangs of glittering drinks. I smiled when the camera turned my way, but inside I felt like I was watching my own life from a distance. John slid next to me, arm loosely draped around my shoulders. "You okay?" he asked. "Just a little loud," I said. He laughed. "You're always saying that one day I'll get you too, actually. Have fun." I smiled faintly. "Fun looks different for me, John." That should have been harmless, but I saw his jaw tighten. He turned back to his friends, and the conversation picked up again. I thought that would be the end of it, until the teasing began. John, one of his friends, Tasha, called across the table. "Your girlfriend looks like she'd rather be doing taxes than sitting here." Everyone laughed. I forced a polite smile, swirling my straw. John grinned, loving the attention. "She's just shy, always so serious, right, babe?" I nodded, pretending not to mind, but then, after another round of drinks, the mood shifted. John leaned forward, voice louder than it needed to be. "You know what it is. Jessie never wants to do anything spontaneous, always planning, always saying she's tired. My ex, she'd never say no to a night out." The laughter around the table faltered, unsure. My chest tightened. He said her name casually, like a punch disguised as a joke. "Jenna," he continued, "she'd say, 'Let's go anyway.' Even if it was 2 a.m., that girl knew how to live." Someone muttered, "Dude," but he kept going. "Sometimes Jessie acts more like my mom than my girlfriend. You got to loosen up, babe. Be a real woman for once." The words landed sharp and heavy. Be a real woman. The table fell silent. The air seemed to drain from the room. I didn't speak. I just stared at him, the man who used to say I was the calm to his chaos. I could feel the sting rising behind my eyes, but I refused to let it fall here, in front of them. "Wow," Tasha whispered. Someone else shifted, uncomfortably. John laughed too loud, trying to play it off. "Come on, it's a joke, don't be so sensitive." I set my glass down gently, hand steady even, though my heart wasn't. "Got it," I said. He blinked. "What?" I said. "Got it." I slid it out from the booth, took my jacket and stood. "Jessie, where are you going? Don't make this weird." But the moment had already curdled beyond repair. The bar felt suffocating, perfume, sweat, laughter that no longer sounded like people, just noise. As I pushed through the crowd, I heard him call again, voice rising over the music. "Babe, come on." It was a joke. Outside, the night air hit cold against my face. For a moment I just stood there under the neon sign, letting the noise fade. Behind the door, my phone buzzed, his name lighting up the screen. I turned it over, screen down. Inside he was, probably laughing it off, saying I was being dramatic. That was his pattern. Hurt, then minimize, then charm his way back into being right. But this time, something inside me refused to move. I started walking, no destination, just away from the table, from the noise, from the version of myself that kept explaining away his disrespect. Each step felt like waking up. By the time I reached the corner, the air was quiet enough for me to hear my own breath again. My hands trembled a little, but there was no fear, just clarity. I thought of all the nights I'd sat waiting for him to notice me, all the times I'd brushed off small cruelties because I wanted peace more than pride. And then I realized something simple, almost absurdly simple. Peace built on silence isn't peace, it's suffocation. I looked up at the sky, blank, starless, city lit, and exhaled. Maybe this is what ending feels like, I thought. Not explosive, not cinematic, just quiet. Inside he'd keep talking, spinning the story, laughing, with people who didn't know what he'd done. But outside in the cold, for the first time I wasn't reacting, I was deciding. When I finally got home that night I didn't cry. I hung my coat, washed my hands, sat on the couch and stared at the phone lighting up again and again. One message, then another, then another. John, you really walked out over a joke, John. Everyone thought you were being dramatic, John, you know. I didn't mean it like that. I watched them appear and vanish into the screen light. Then I locked the phone, set it face down and whispered to the empty room, I heard you just fine. The silence that followed was heavy but not cruel. It was mine. The next morning, sunlight slipped through my blinds like it didn't know anything had broken. The world kept moving. Birds still chirped, traffic still hummed, but inside my apartment it felt eerily still. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Dozens of notifications, messages, missed calls. John, come on, Jesse. You know how I get when I drink. John, everyone thought you were being uptight. John, I said I was sorry, didn't I? He hadn't said sorry not once. I sat up staring at those messages until they blurred. It was strange how quickly words could lose their meaning when they came from someone who'd already hollowed them out. For months, maybe years, I'd mistaken noise for love, the constant chatter, the promises, the laughter that always came after an apology. But that night, when he'd compared me to her, something in me had gone silent. And once silence begins, it's hard to stop hearing it. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the texts after that. I left the phone on the counter, made coffee, and let the stillness fill the room like a new habit. I wanted to learn. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. I knew it would be him before I even looked through the peephole. John stood there holding 2 coffees and a brown paper bag, wearing the same expression he always did when he wanted to fix things without actually fixing them. That half smile that said, let's pretend none of it happened. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Jesse, he said softly, like the sound of my name could erase everything. I brought peace offerings. He lifted the bag slightly. Your favorite cinnamon muffins. I looked at him, really looked at him. His hair was messy, eyes tired, shirt wrinkled. But there was no regret there. Not the kind that mattered. Just calculation. You can come in, I said, flatly, if you want to talk. He smiled, relieved. Finally, John stepped inside, placing the coffee on the counter like he still lived here. You really left me hanging last night, he said with a forced laugh. Everyone was shocked. I folded my arms, shocked that you said it, or that I walked out. He looked up, surprised by my tone. It was a joke, Jesse. You know how my friends are. They tease each other all the time. I wasn't your friend last night, John. I was the punchline. His jaw clenched. You're blowing this out of proportion. I stayed silent, which always made him uncomfortable. He filled quiet moments with excuses. I mean, seriously, he continued, pacing a little. You can't hold one stupid comment against me. Everyone says dumb things when they've had a few drinks. You didn't sound drunk, I said quietly. You sounded honest. He stopped moving. What's that supposed to mean? It means you said exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect me to hear it. He let out a breath somewhere between disbelief and annoyance. Oh my God, Jesse, are you really doing this? Nitpicking over tone, over a single word. I tilted my head slightly. Be a real woman, remember? That's more than one word. His face shifted, the mask slipping for just a second. You're twisting what I said. No, I replied. You did that yourself. For a long moment he just stood there, hands on his hips, eyes darting toward the door like he was deciding whether to leave or stay long enough to win. Finally he exhaled sharply. You're impossible when you get like this. I'm trying to make things right and you're acting like I committed a crime. I didn't say you did, I said calmly. I just don't want to pretend anymore. Pretend what? That we're okay. The silence that followed was heavy enough to break something invisible between us. John's expression hardened. So, that's it. You're just done after everything. Yes. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the person standing in front of him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe for the first time he was seeing me without all the patience he'd taken for granted. "Jessie," he said finally, softer this time, "you're overreacting. You always do this. You shut down, build walls, and then act like I'm the bad guy." I nodded once. "If that helps you sleep, then fine. I'm the bad guy." He scoffed, grabbed his jacket, and muttered, "Unbelievable." The door slammed behind him. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the space he'd left, the echo of his voice still buzzing faintly in the air. But the quiet that followed wasn't hollow anymore. It was honest. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel small. I poured out his untouched coffee, washed the cup, and opened the window. Cool air drifted in, carrying the faint scent of rain. Down on the street, cars moved, people laughed. The world went on. Somewhere out there, John was probably telling someone his version of the story. How his girlfriend couldn't take a joke. How she always made everything a big deal. But none of that mattered, because I was finally learning the most dangerous kind of peace, the kind that doesn't need defending. That night I didn't check my phone once. I just let the messages pile up unanswered until the screen went black. And in that darkness I realized silence can sound like punishment to someone who's used to being heard. To me it sounded like freedom. The following week passed in fragments. Quiet mornings, muted afternoons, and nights that no longer ended with arguments disguised as conversations. I thought peace would feel empty, but instead it filled every corner of my apartment like soft light. I started hearing things again, the whir of my coffee machine, the sound of rain against the window, even my own breathing. It was unsettling at first, realizing how long I'd been tuning myself out to listen to him. On the third morning, I turned on my phone. Notifications flooded the screen. His name, his friends' unread messages, stacked one over another. "John, you really think ignoring me solves anything? John, you're being immature. John, at least talk to me like an adult." Each one was a thread tugging at the same old place in me, the one that wanted to fix, explain, make peace. But that part of me was tired, so I didn't reply. That night, Tasha, one of John's friends, sent me a message. "Hey, just checking in. John's been acting weird. He misses you. Maybe talk to him." I stared at it for a long while. Tasha had been one of the people who'd laughed that night. The kind of laughter that doesn't sound cruel until you remember it in silence later. I typed a response, then deleted it. People always want the woman to be the one who fixes things, the one who forgives, who smooths over the edges of someone else's chaos. Not this time. That weekend, I went for a walk through the park near my building. The air smelled like wet grass and distant coffee shops. I passed couples, laughing kids, chasing pigeons, old men, feeding ducks, ordinary peace, the kind I hadn't realized I'd missed. Somewhere between the trees I thought about John's ex, Jenna Wallace, the woman I'd always been subtly compared to. He'd mentioned her like a ghost, never fully gone, always haunting his idea of fun. What kind of peace had she found after him, if any? Later that evening I found out a notification popped up, a photo posted by one of Jay's mutual friends. It was from a bar. John was there, drinking, hand smile a little too wide, and next to him unmistakably was Jenna. I stared at it, not out of jealousy but disbelief. It was almost poetic. He'd run back to the same story he'd once tried to write me out of. A few days later, Tasha called. I didn't answer, but her text came seconds later. "You won't believe this. Jenna blocked John. He tried getting back together and she told him he's pathetic. He's been sulking ever since." I read it once, then deleted the thread. The universe was doing its own balancing act. I didn't need to watch, but the more I ignored him, the louder his desperation became. New numbers, different tones. "I miss you, Jessie. You're being cold. This isn't you. We can fix this." No, we couldn't. Not because I didn't care, but because caring had turned into survival. I began to notice how the people around him shifted too. Those who'd laughed that night were suddenly quiet. Some even reached out to me. Soft apologies, wrapped in casual messages. "Hey, I didn't realize how bad it looked that night. John shouldn't have said that. We were all drunk. I'm sorry. I didn't hold it against them. Shame is contagious. It spreads fast once the laughter stops, but the biggest change wasn't around me, it was within me. I started waking up earlier, exercising again, cooking breakfast without checking my phone, small things but they felt monumental. I'd stopped revolving around someone else's mood. One evening I found myself writing not to him but for me. I took out an old notebook, the one I used to journal in before the relationship. The pages smelled faintly of dust and forgotten promises. I wrote, "You told me being a real woman meant saying yes. I think being a real woman means knowing when to say nothing at all." Then I kept writing everything I'd swallowed for years. The nights of self-doubt, the apologies I never owed, the ache of trying to be enough for someone who measured love and control. When I finished, my hands were trembling. I tore out the page, folded it once, and placed it over a candle flame. The paper curled, blackened, and fell into ash. It wasn't anger I felt watching it burn. It was relief, clean, quiet, final. As the smoke rose, I whispered, "You don't exist here anymore." Outside, thunder rumbled distantly. Rain began tapping against the glass, and for the first time in years I let myself listen, really listen to the sound of something, ending without needing to fix it. 2 weeks had passed since I'd last seen John in person. I thought he'd finally understood that silence wasn't a punishment, just a boundary. But people like him don't understand absence. They treat it as an invitation to try harder. The first new number came on a Monday morning. Unknown. "Jesse, please. 5 minutes. I just need to explain." I blocked it. Then another on Wednesday. Unknown. "You're really just going to ghost me after everything." Blocked again. Bye. Friday I'd stopped counting. Each message was just a variation of the same sentence. Regret without accountability. It's strange how predictable desperation sounds once you've learned peace. That weekend I met a friend for brunch. We hadn't seen each other in months. Halfway through our conversation she leaned in and said, "So you know John's been posting about you, right?" My fork froze midair. "About me?" "Not by name," she said carefully, "but the captions are obvious stuff like, 'Some people can't handle real love.' And funny how women want a good man until they get one." I let out a soft laugh, more from disbelief than humor. He's performing again, performing. He always needed an audience, even for his apologies. That night I stayed off social media. I'd learned that watching someone self-destruct publicly doesn't bring closure, it just reopens the wound. But closure, it turned out, wasn't interested in staying theoretical. The following Tuesday I saw him. I was at my gym headphones and halfway through my warm-up. The mirrors reflected the usual rhythm of morning bodies, people running, lifting, breathing, and then I caught his reflection in the far corner. John. He wasn't dressed to work out. Jeans, white shirt, that same cologne I used to like because it reminded me of rain. He spotted me instantly and started walking over. I pulled out one earbud, calm but alert. "Jesse," he said, breath uneven like he'd rehearsed this a dozen times already. "Can we talk?" "I told you not to contact me, I just need to explain." His voice cracked slightly, the performance beginning. That night at the bar, I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I was drunk. Everyone was laughing. You remember exactly what you said." I interrupted. "You weren't drunk. You were comfortable." He blinked, thrown off. "You're not even going to let me apologize." "I'm letting you," I said. "You're just not getting what you want from it." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you don't miss me," I replied quietly. "You miss control." The words hit him harder than I expected. He stepped back slightly, eyes narrowing. "Wow, you really think you're above me now, huh?" "No," I said, "I just stopped standing beneath you." For a second his face twisted, anger, shame, confusion all colliding. Then he muttered something under his breath and turned away. He didn't come back, but his shadow lingered. A few days later Tasha messaged again. "You won't believe what happened last night. John showed up to Jenna's birthday party, tried to pull her aside to talk. She told him to grow up in front of everyone. Then he tried to flirt with her friend. It was pathetic. I stared at the message, feeling nothing but a quiet ache of recognition. That was the man I'd tried to defend, the man I'd told myself just needed understanding. Thanks for telling me, I texted back. But I'm not interested in the rerun, Tasha replied with a single word. Fair. That night, I sat by my window, watching the city lights blink below. It struck me how peace isn't a destination, it's a practice. Every time I ignored a call, every time I refused to explain, I was choosing it again. Still, I couldn't shake one thought. People like John don't fade quietly, they unravel until the world starts to notice. And, somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the last time I'd hear his name, but it would be the last time it had power. Because the truth is, silence doesn't just protect you from others, it gives them the space to reveal who they really are, loudly, desperately, and without your help. As I turned off the light, I whispered to myself, he's not my problem anymore. For once, I actually believed it. It was a quiet Friday afternoon when John's name came back into my world, not from him this time, but from someone I hadn't spoken to in months. I was at a cafe, laptop open, finishing up some freelance work when I heard a familiar voice say, Jesse, wow, hey. I looked up. Mark, one of John's old friends, stood in front of me with that awkward smile people wear when they have gossip they can't wait to unload. Hey Mark, I said, polite but guarded. He scratched the back of his neck. You look great. Really? Heard you've been doing well, new job and all. Yeah, things are good. He nodded, then lowered his voice conspiratorially. Speaking of good, John's not. You heard about what happened? I sighed inwardly. No, and I don't need to. Yeah, but he leaned closer. You might want to. It's wild. I didn't stop him. Some stories tell themselves whether you invite them in or not. Apparently, after Jenna rejected him at her birthday party, John started spiraling, drinking too much, posting emotional quotes about loyalty and betrayal on social media. One night, he showed up at another friend's event, drunk, slurring, trying to pick a fight with Jenna's new boyfriend. Someone recorded the whole thing, Mark said, almost whispering. It went around our group chat. It's rough. What happened? He tried to say Jenna led him on, then shouted about how women play the victim. The guy shoved him and John threw his drink. It hit someone else. Total chaos. I closed my eyes for a moment, exhaling. Slowly, the same man who once laughed at me for being too serious was now unraveling in public, his confidence dissolving under the same spotlight he used to crave. Mark kept talking softer. Now, people started cutting him off. After that, even Tasha, he kind of turned on everyone, blamed us for taking your side. I gave a small, tired smile. I didn't realize there were sides. Apparently there were. He paused, glancing down. He's been trying to reach you again, by the way, said he. Emailed you. He did, I said. I didn't read it. Mark hesitated. Maybe you should. It's not like the others. After he left, curiosity got the better of me. I opened my laptop, logged in, and there it was. An unread email sitting at the top of my inbox. Subject line, last try. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake. I just clicked. John Carter. Jesse, I know, you don't owe me a single thing, but please let me say this once. I was cruel that night. I made you feel small, because I was afraid of how calm you were, how sure you didn't react the way I expected, and that scared me more than anything. I realize now that I never wanted a partner. I wanted an audience. You stopped clapping and I panicked. You didn't deserve that. You were good to me. I hurt you because it was easier than admitting I wasn't enough. I'm sorry. I hope you find someone who knows what to do with your silence. John, I read it twice. It wasn't long, no manipulation, no excuses, just truth. The kind that shows up only when someone's finally out of performances. I didn't reply, not out of anger, out of finality. Some apologies aren't meant to open doors, they're meant to close them, gently. That night, I walked home, through the city lights flickering, across the wet pavement, the smell of rain thick in the air, everything felt still. Forgiveness doesn't always arrive like a revelation. Sometimes it slips in quietly when you realize the wound doesn't ache anymore. Back home, I brewed tea, sat by the window, and thought about how strange it was, the way people like John always demand noise, when what they truly need is silence. He'd mocked me for being too calm, too, reserved. But it was that same calm that ended up undoing him. Maybe karma isn't loud. Maybe it just waits for everyone else to stop talking. I opened his email. One last time, read the final line. I hope you find someone who knows what to do with your silence. And for the first time, I smiled because I already had me. A month passed, then another. And just like that, John's name faded from conversation, from messages, from memory. The world, it turns out, forgets people faster than they think it will. I'd moved apartments by then. A smaller place, brighter, quieter, no ghosts, hiding in the corners. The morning smelled like coffee and lemon soap instead of his cologne. My reflection in the mirror looked different too. Not prettier, not sadder, just honest. I still got the occasional message from old friends, the polite, probing kind. You ever talk to John again? Heard he moved back with his parents. He's been keeping to himself lately. I'd type back short answers. No, didn't know, hope he's okay. And I meant it, not because I wanted him back, but because letting go completely means you stop wishing anyone harm. One evening, I ran into Tasha at a grocery store. She hesitated before walking up. Jessie, I turned, smiled. Hey, it's been a while. Yeah. She shifted awkwardly, holding a basket of wine bottles and frozen pizza. You look peaceful. I am. That's good. She paused, then said quietly, for what it's worth, John, he's not doing great. Lost his job after missing too many deadlines, drinks a lot. He told someone he can't get over you. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a quiet kind of sadness for the pattern he never broke. Sometimes, I said softly, people only realize what peace looks like after they lose it. Tasha nodded, her eyes glimmering with something between regret and understanding. You were always too calm for him. That used to bug him, you know. He said your silence made him feel small. It wasn't my silence, I said, it was his noise. She smiled weakly. He's learning that the hard way. We parted ways at the checkout. I walked home beneath a sky stray with pink clouds, carrying a small bag of groceries and the lightest heart I'd had in years. That night, as I unpacked, I noticed a small frame photo at the bottom of an old box, me and John, laughing at a summer fair. I remembered how that day had ended with a fight over nothing. The picture didn't hurt anymore. It just looked like two people pretending time could fix what character wouldn't. I slid it into a drawer, not out of bitterness but closure. Some memories deserve quiet storage, not eraser. Days turned into weeks, and slowly life began expanding again. I took a weekend trip alone to the coast, something I'd always wanted to do but never could, because John used to say, what's the point of going somewhere if you're by yourself? Standing by the shoreline, the wind in my hair, I realized the point was exactly that, to be with myself and not feel lonely. A stranger asked to take my picture. I smiled genuinely this time, not for show, not for anyone's approval, just because I could. When I got home, I hung that photo above my desk. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about proof that silence can heal what words destroyed. One night as I journaled, a thought crossed my mind so quietly I almost missed it. He once said I wasn't a real woman. And yet, the realest thing I ever did was walk away. Not in anger, not to prove him wrong, but because I finally believed I was enough without his approval. Somewhere out there, John was still probably trying to find someone to clap for him, but I'd learned that peace doesn't come from applause. It comes from being okay with the quiet. After the music stops, I looked around, my apartment plants thriving in the sunlight, dishes clean, the faint hum of life that belonged only to me. And I smiled because the silence he mocked had become the very thing that saved me. I closed my journal, blew out the candle, and whispered one final truth into the still air. Being a real woman isn't about saying yes, it's about knowing when to walk away.